Come on in, you guys. We have a brand new episode of my show. It's called Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. If you want to engage live in the content, you really need to go follow me over on Instagram. I am at Livin' Low Carb Man, LIVIN LOWCARBMAN. Once you are there, you can engage live, just like all these wonderful people coming in right now. Thank you guys for being here today on Jimmy Rants. We're also simulcasting live over here on my Facebook page, so thank you guys for watching too. If you missed the live, you can watch it on replay for up to 24 hours. After 24 hours, it does disappear from Instagram, so then pop on over to JimmyRants.com. That's where we house all the past episodes. Also, you can get the past episodes over on YouTube. Type in the keyword Jimmy Rants. You will find the show. So guys, I wanted to talk about something today that has really been in the works for well over a decade. So you guys know I've been doing this online health nutrition revolution thing for the past 15 years. And over those 15 years, I've seen a lot of trends come and go. I've seen a lot of things put out there. And I've seen a lot of tendencies over the years. And one of the tendencies that has been put out there and proposals is to tax things as a means for squelching people's consumption of. So obviously very famous in our history is when they started taxing cigarettes as a means of getting people off of cigarettes. And so when they started taxing cigarettes, people rose a stink about it, but then they were able to get it through, and some of those revenues help with the education of like what smoking cigarettes does to your health, blah, blah, blah. All right, so it was just over a decade ago when all of this anti-sugar stuff started up. Now, I remember I was podcasting on the Livin' La Vida Low Carb show and doing my thing, and people were just, oh yeah, we need a sugar tax. Sugar tax is what we need more than anything. Get people off of sugar, tax them to death. They won't buy it anymore. Perfect, right? And I remember at the time, I was like, guys, no. Because once you allow a tax on something like sugar, which, yes, it's bad. Yes, we want people to stop consuming it because we know what it's doing to their health. But a tax is not the way to do it. And you guys may not know this. My educational background is in public policy. So I was a poli-sci major in undergrad, and then I got my master's degree in public policy. Policy sets precedent. So when you put out a precedent that you can tax something that you deem as unhealthy to consume, then you're setting a very bad precedent that goes to the next thing that they think is unhealthy to consume. And I remember at the time with all this anti-sugar stuff out there, we need to tax it to oblivion. I'm like, guys, you're going to rue the day that you did that, because guess what they'll come for next? They will come for meat. And I have a news story that shows that is exactly what they're doing in 2020. So this is out of Forbes.com, and it's written by this gentleman named Brian Cateman. He is the co-founder and president of this group called Reducitarian Foundation. It's a non-profit organization dedicated to reducing the consumption of animal products. So this guy is a part and parcel vegan. So as I'm reading this, keep that in mind. As I'm reading this story, that is the perspective you're getting. And we need to be aware that these kinds of views are being put out there. And the reason they're put out there, it's the whole basis on why I objected to a sugar tax. They're coming after meat next. And then I thought, okay, if they come after meat, what stops them from coming after butter or coconut oil? It was very high in saturated fat. We need to eliminate it. It's a slippery slope when you allow taxation to be the curber of whatever the behavior is. Now, some people say, well, why not cigarette? We did cigarettes. Why not sugar? Well, the difference between cigarettes, sugar, and meat is cigarettes, you ain't got to consume it. But food is a totally different thing. And I think the moment we think we can curb consumption of a perceived unhealthy food, which everybody agrees sugar is an unhealthy food, but meat, no. You have a dichotomy of people that believe about meat. You've got the vegans who think it's as bad as sugar, but then you've got people who are carnivore who it's the basis of their diet and their healthy nutrition. So let's stop pretending like that this won't be used against things that someone chooses to say is unhealthy. And again, who gets to make that decision about what foods get taxed and what foods don't get taxed? All right, let me read the story about the meat tax. Again, if you joined us late, Brian Capeman wrote this, and he's from a vegan group called Reducitarian Foundation, who's trying to reduce consumption of animal products through his nonprofit organization. They say 2 things in life for certain: death and taxes. The latter one is often the more controversial of the two, especially when it's used to deter people from things that they enjoy. But now conversations are turning to the possibility of a meat tax, since the amount of factory farm meat we consume is unsustainable, and the higher tax may be the only way to kickstart widespread behavior change. I'm going to stop right there. Brian is failing to recognize that most of us that eat meat in the keto, paleo, real food, and carnivore movements, most of us abhor the factory farming. And we agree with him on that point. See, this is the thing. Vegans are so tied up in their anti-meat propaganda that they fail to recognize that there are those of us that agree with a lot of the kind of basic stances. Now, they take it to the extreme and say, well, eliminate all animal foods, done. And I think that's a nuclear bomb approach. If we're concerned about the factory farming and it being unsustainable, okay, let's work on that aspect of the meat supply. But let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater when we've got perfectly good local farmers, which I've been promoting you guys. Go visit during this COVID-19 crisis. Eatwild.com, by the way, that website. And I've been pushing you to go there, find a local farmer, support those that are doing things the right way. So we both abhor the factory farming. But they say don't eat meat at all, and I say eat better meat. Okay? So they're saying here, higher tax may be the only way to kickstart widespread behavior change. Why? Why does it take a tax? If meat is the problem, then they need to do a better compelling argument as to why people need to be avoiding it. They also need to address the elephant in the room about veganism, not eating meat at all. Why are you all vitamin B12 deficient? Why do you have other deficiencies in your diet, not the least of which is amino acids? Because the only way to get your complete proteins is from animal-based foods. Every single animal-based food has every single essential amino acid that your body needs. You can get it from mostly plants, but it sure is a lot of work. You got to eat a whole lot of different kinds of plants and a wide variety in order to get in all of those amino acids. And with all those amino acids, you're getting a crap load of carbs too. So if you're trying to change your metabolic state and lower your blood sugar and lower your insulin, lower your inflammation levels, it's going to be extremely difficult to get adequate protein and fat. Oh yeah, by the way, fat is essential too. It's going to be hard to do that just from plants. And yet this group wants to lower animal consumption through the use of a tax. And then the question becomes, what do you do with that tax money? Let's say they tax it with like a 40% tax, which would be draconian, to try to curb consumption. What do you do with that tax money? Push vegan propaganda? Like, what are we doing with that money? Lots of questions about this, you guys. Again, if you join us late, we're debating whether a meat tax is a good idea, and I laid the groundwork that over a decade ago, I've been online for 15 years talking about health and nutrition, and online about 10-ish years ago, there was this move for us to tax sugar. And everybody, oh yeah, we need to tax sugar. And I at the time said, wait, because if you allow them to tax sugar, they're going to come after fat and meat next. And now they're coming after meat. Sin taxes is what they call these, is the name given to those taxes applied to products that are considered harmful to humans. Here we go. This is my problem with these so-called sin taxes. Who gets to determine what is harmful to humans? Again, if you ask a vegan, they think meat is the absolute worst thing you can possibly put in your mouth, even above sugar. But you ask a carnivore person, meat is the most essential part of their diet. And keto people make a lot of animal-based foods part of their diet. Paleo people, especially from grass-fed animals and pasture-raised animals, they consider those an essential part. Most of the population has at least a little bit of animal-based foods in their diet. So what are we doing here? We're taxing something that 3%-ish of the population, that's the number of vegans out there, considers harmful to humans. So we're going to let the 3% determine what the rest of us 97% are going to be able to consume and whether it's affordable or not. You see why this is not good policy? Usually those who consume them and those around them, these products generate a proportionally high cost when we use or consume them in terms of healthcare and other public services. You're not getting away with that one. The higher cost of healthcare, we can directly attribute a lot of those chronic diseases and the things that are going on in healthcare. We can directly relate them to carbohydrate consumption. And what is almost exclusively what vegans eat? Oh yeah, it's carbohydrate. Now I get it. Refined carbohydrates and whole food carbohydrates are a totally different beast. I get it, you guys. Don't yell at me. But the point is, let's not ostracize meat simply because you think fat and red meat and protein is all unhealthy for people. It very clearly is not. And let's not pretend like people that eat mostly animal-based foods with a limited carbohydrate consumption is putting any kind of burden on the healthcare system. Just the opposite. Guys, I have health insurance. I pay a premium of about $560 a month for my healthcare coverage. I have not been to the doctor in like 5 years. 5 years. I don't get sick. And that's a testament to the kind of foods that I've been eating. It's a testament, and a lot of you guys can have the same testament yourself. You don't need to use the healthcare system when you're healthy. And I would argue that the reason I'm healthy is because of all these animal-based foods that they now want to tax the crap out of. You see why this is a very bad idea? Who gets to determine whether a meat tax is valid or not simply because one portion of the population happens to think meat is harmful to humans? The idea is that a higher tax will curb consumption. Obviously, you raise the price on anything, it's going to curb consumption. We're seeing that right now with COVID-19. A lot of the animal-based foods, for example, have run out in the stores, and the supply of them are going to go down because of the things we've talked about on previous Jimmy Rants with the manufacturing plants shutting down. And so those prices are going to go higher. It's the supply and demand thing. Well, if you add a tax to it, it makes higher costs, and that does curb consumption, but then people have to go seek out other food options instead. So they cite cigarettes and alcohol as the examples, having a higher rate of tax attached to them all around the world. In Illinois, for example, taxes introduced on beer and spirits back in 2009, they saw a 25% decrease in deaths from drunk driving in the following 2 years. Okay, alcohol and cigarettes, I'm not going to argue those taxes probably were a good idea to curb consumption. But again, what we're talking about here is food. You have to eat. You have to have nourishment for your body. You don't have to have cigarettes. You don't have to have alcohol. Although some people would argue right now, yes, we do need alcohol, especially those of you with very small children driving you crazy right now. But the point is, food is essential in your life because you will die if you don't get food. And so, yes, they saw a 25% decrease in deaths from drunk driving. What do they think is going to happen if people stop eating meat? I know what a vegan would say. Oh, well, the heart disease rates will go way down, and diabetes will go way down, and obesity will go way down. So because they base it on all this epidemiological research that's out there, and those of you don't know that word. That's where they look at a bunch of studies all smushed together and they come to some conclusion based on all these studies. It's not an actual study, a randomized controlled clinical trial. It's a study of a study of a study of a study of a study, and oh, bippity boppity boo, here's what we conclude out of it. And that's what most of veganism is founded on. That's where most of this animosity towards animal-based foods comes from. If you watched the Game Changers movie, don't, but if you watched it on Netflix, it's a vegan propaganda film, and almost every single claim in that movie had everything to do with epidemiology. And then you start asking people like Dr. Joel Kahn, one of the people in the vegan movement, where is the randomized controlled clinical trial showing what you're saying about meat being bad? Oh, well, we don't have any. Yeah, no kidding. It simply doesn't exist. And yet before we were a very privileged society, people ate meat and it was just fine. Even just as recent ago as grandma or great-grandma. They had meat, they had butter, they ate and they cooked with all kinds of so-called unhealthy animal-based foods, and they did just fine. I got 20 backyard chickens back there, and they're pumping out some eggs, and I'm eating the crap out of eggs. I had 8 eggs cooked in some grass-fed butter with some cheese and spices and stuff this morning, and it was glorious. And so this is an odd time for them to be bringing up a meat tax, and I wonder if the timing of this has anything to do with kind of this crisis situation. Are people trying to take advantage of this crisis to try to push through agendas? Who could be doing that? All right, let me continue. While many sin taxes have led to decreased consumption of the sinful products, opponents say they disproportionately affect lower income households and they infringe on personal liberty. Well, both of those are true. You do affect people that have minimum resources. I think about those people on fixed incomes, people on welfare, people on like a fixed budget that are on Medicare. These people, they don't get much money. And so if you don't have a lot of money, you have to spend your money wisely. Why are we going to make it harder for those people to get the foods that they want? And since when is meat considered the enemy? And why don't we put these kind of taxes, if they're going to use it as a way to curb, on cereal, for example? All cereal is grains and sugar. 2 things that we know are raising inflammation, raising insulin, raising blood sugar, making your health worse. And yet those get a free pass, but somehow meat is going to get the tax. So you bet it's going to affect low-income households and infringe on your personal liberty. What happened to personal choice? Why do you get to choose that the foods I want to eat get a tax on them? And then this crap food that you want to buy and get sicker and sicker on, there's no tax at all. In fact, it's encouraged. Go eat your healthy whole grains. You see how bass-backwards this is, you guys? Therefore, proposals for introducing sin taxes around the world have faced a lot of controversy and opposition, and you're getting more today here on Jimmy Rants. And many failed to get off the ground. Well, good. I think they're abysmal failures. It's a very bad policy idea. Back in 2012, former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg infamously attempted to increase the tax of sugary drinks, but his proposal was rejected by the state's Supreme Court and then widely opposed publicly. The tax would have covered drinks sold in fast food franchises, delis, movie theaters, but not grocery stores, and milkshakes and fruit juices would have been exempt from the higher tax. So you see how it's selectiveness about what the tax would be on. And I wonder, in the meat realm, would they put the sin tax on plant-based burgers? It says Beyond Meat right there on the packaging. Would that also apply? You see how convoluted it could get? And on Bloomberg's idea, I remember at the time he wanted to tax sugary drinks and you were limited to 1 soda at a restaurant at a time. And I'm thinking, I've been to New York City. There are restaurants like literally smushed side by side by side by side by side. So you go to one and walk next door and get another and walk next door and get another. It was just another way to pull taxes out of people, all under the guise of, well, we're trying to curb consumption. You wouldn't curb consumption at all. And then they exempted milkshakes and fruit juice. It's like loaded with sugar. If you ever looked at a fruit juice like an apple juice or even an orange juice, almost exactly the same amount of sugar, exactly, as a soda. It shocked me when I first looked at like a Capri Sun, for example, and then I pulled out a Coca-Cola can, and you look at them side by side. I think the fruit juice actually had a little bit more sugar in it. And yet people see fruit juice, oh, it's healthy, and the soda, unhealthy. You see how these syntaxes, there's murkiness there? So despite the controversy, lawmakers in Germany have now proposed a new tax on meat. Now, get it. Germany. Yes, this is happening in Germany. But if it happens somewhere in the world, don't think it can't happen in America, because the nimwits here in America that believe animal-based foods are somehow harming you or harming the environment, killing the planet and all this crap, don't think they won't try to pull this here. Well, Germany did it. Let's do it here in America. And Germany isn't the only country considering a meat tax. Denmark and Sweden are also looking into it. In Germany, I wonder, that's the home of bratwurst. Are they really going to tell people we're gonna tax your bratwurst a little more? Yeah, that's not going to go down too well in Germany. In Germany, they have the value added tax, which is a VAT tax on most food, which includes meat. It's a 7% tax already, the VAT tax, compared to the standard VAT rate of 19%. So they make the VAT a little bit lower on these food products for the purposes of what I was talking about earlier. Food is necessary. You need to eat. And so they lower it there, but they're trying now there in Germany. Lawmakers on both sides of each party have proposed raising the tax of the meat to that standard VAT tax of 19%. Can you imagine? Let's just do the math easy. 20% tax on a package of ribeye. So when I go to Sam's Club and I get a package of like five or six ribeyes, it's around $50. So $50 and a 20% tax, that's going to add another $10 to the price of that meat. Why do I have to pay $10 more just because you happen to think that's a bad thing? And why do we need a nanny telling us, no, 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 you can't have that meat, you're a bad boy? And meanwhile, somebody can go over into the cereal section and just pick up, or the pasta section and just pick up, or the dessert section and just pick up, the bakery and just pick up. No added taxes. What's wrong with this picture? Like, am I going crazy? Are we living in George Orwell again? 1984? Feels like it sometimes. Politicians in support of the tax in Germany say that current tax rates on meat are contributing to the terrible standards of animal agriculture, and that a higher tax could go towards improving animal welfare. Well, the last time I checked, taxation is not supposed to be used that way. If animal welfare sucks right now, why don't you deal with the companies that are making these meat products and using very poor agricultural practices? Why do we have to tax the consumer, the end consumer, to make these changes take place? Demand these companies make better choices when it comes to how they're taking care of their animals. This is not hard. There are plenty here in America, local farmers that know how to take care of animals very well. And they have chickens and pigs and cows and all the rest. And they're taking care of their animals just fine. They don't need a tax to give them extra money to bring awareness and improve the animal welfare. No, just improve the animal welfare. Getting rid of CAFO farms and getting rid of factory farming. That is the reason why animal foods are so vilified by these vegans. And yet again, like I said earlier, they're throwing the baby out with the bathwater and they're pretending like it's the meat itself, when it's not the meat itself, it's the way the meat is being made and distributed and the animals are being treated. We agree with them. Treat the animals better. Because if you treat the animals better, they have a better nutritional profile. They're not under stress. You're not pumping them with antibiotics. All of these things that all of us find abhorrent in the food supply when it comes to meat. And yet they're attributing it to all meat. So there are ways to do it better without having to tax it to oblivion. However, in Germany, the country's agriculture minister, unsurprisingly, objects to a meat tax. Listen to this. And there are concerns the move would affect the farmers' incomes. Well, yeah, because if people aren't buying as much meat, those farmers aren't getting as much profitability. And oh yeah, by the way, those taxes coming in don't go to the farmer. They go right to the government's coffers to do whatever they want with. And so that is a huge concern. And why would the government impose a tax that would hurt a business like that? It makes no sense at all. This is the most common criticism of a meat tax, and it could be resolved by governments using the money raised from the tax to compensate farmers. Well, isn't that nice? Hey, farmers, we're going to put a tax on the foods that you sell, but don't worry, we got you on the back end. We'll throw some money back at you. Oh yeah, you want to believe that crap? Like seriously? Are we seriously thinking the government is going to give them a promise and a prayer that will pay you back and compensate you for the loss of income? Not if there's agenda driven to try to eliminate consumption of meat, which I've shared many times on Jimmy Rants before. This is the goal of all these vegans. They want meat consumption to be totally eliminated by the year 2035. Let's not forget the Impossible Foods CEO. I read a story about this the other day on Jimmy Rants. His goal is to make sure that happens by 2035. That's 15 years from now. And so a meat tax is just another step in that direction. Or to support them by turning their operations away from animal agriculture towards crops. So, okay, farmers, you got all those cows and chickens and pigs. Yeah, you need to get rid of that crap. Here's some soy seeds to get you going. Here's some corn crop seeds. Yeah, this is what you should change to, because we're not going to buy your meat crap anymore. We're just going to make you grow crops, and maybe we'll buy those from you. Maybe. No. You see how messed up this is? There's already a movement underway to do exactly this. In Leah Garce's new book, Grilled, she tells the story of today's chicken contract farmers who are treated like indentured servants as they acquire excessive debt. They're paid pennies on the dollar, and the companies they contract for, like Tyson Foods, retain nearly all control over their operations. The conditions are so bad that some of them have quit in search of new business opportunities. Well, here's the thing. Why are we blaming meat again for the bad practices of companies like Tyson? Yes, Tyson is the world's largest meat manufacturer. That don't mean they do things well. They don't. They're a part of the factory farming system that we all abhor so much. So again, why punish people that's the end consumer that wants good quality meats? Why punish us with a tax when you should be requiring better standards of these companies making meat products and using bad practices? Don't blame meat eaters on a sin that is not their fault. We, the consumer, we can't control how the food is being made. All we can do is try to seek out those people that are making it well and are doing good practices. That's what we, the consumer, can do. The problem is we're being limited in our choices, and now they want to tax the meat itself, which puts a further burden on all of us who are just simply trying to feed ourselves and our families well. One of those farmers, Mike Weaver, a former chicken farmer in West Virginia, he now grows hemp in his old chicken barns, and it's likely to make much more money at it too. Well, yeah, if you grow in hemp, there's all kind of like hemp oil and CBD oil and all that. There's a lot of money in that now. So that's probably not a bad business move if he sees the handwriting on the wall that there is this move to tax meat. But let's not pretend like that's the answer. Well, everybody should just shift over to a crop model who's had an animal-based model up until now. Why? Why force them out of a business that they see as a passion? In fact, on today's episode of my podcast, Real Talk with Jimmy Moore and Dr. Will Cole, Dr. Cole, Will shared about his brother, I believe, just moved to Pennsylvania where he lives, out from California. He moved to Pennsylvania in order to start up an organic chicken farm with hundreds of chickens. So there's still great interest in animal-based foods. Those people that are providing good quality animal protein and fat. And that's the way it should be. We don't need to be taxing this, you guys. Billions upon billions of animals are raised on factory farms, often under cruel conditions every year. Yeah, and we think it sucks. So let's stop pretending like you think meat eaters are okay with that. We're not. Most of us are not. Animal agriculture is one of the most environmentally damaging human activities and one of the most resource intensive. Well, that's been debunked many times. You can definitely do a search online. I know there's been some YouTube videos that debunks this whole resource intensive. It takes a whole lot more resources to grow plants than it does to raise animals. This notion that it takes like 50 gallons of water per pound of meat, it's bull. Like, literally, bull would also be included in the meat. I've never had bull meat. Have you had bull meat? Anyway, that's an aside. I think we just need to correct some of the misinformation. And you can tell a vegan wrote this because they're just bought in hook, line, and sinker to their own talking points. And they're really not based on anything. According to the WWF, a quarter of global land use change and forestry emissions are driven by beef production alone. Oh. They kill me. They repeat these same lies over and over and over and over and over. And they're simply not true. Not only do cattle produce methane, they fart. Oh, gee, imagine that, cows fart. But animal agriculture drives deforestation and CO2 in the atmosphere that's stored by trees, which also absorbs CO2. No, it does not! Again, I will tell you, go look up the TED Talk from this guy named Allen, A-L-L-E-N, last name Savory, S-A-V-O-R-Y. He makes a very compelling 15-minute case in his TED Talk about how animals are not the problem in the areas where you're seeing that happen, deforestation. They're the solution. Put animals where there's deforestation, and very quickly the landscape changes. He shows you incredible images. Go look it up. Those of you watching this on YouTube, and for the rest of you, go look it up on YouTube. Alan Savory, S-A-V-O-R-Y, and TED Talk. And you'll find his talk. It's pretty spectacular, you guys, and it runs counter directly to what this nimwit wrote in this Forbes article. Aside from our meat consumption harming animals and the planet, it does not. It plays a huge role in cardiovascular disease. Cardiovascular disease is a direct result of carbohydrate consumption raising inflammation in your body. So I've had 2 CT heart scans that shows actual signs of disease when it comes to heart disease, a big fat 0 in the heart calcium score, and I have mostly animal-based foods. And people think, well, there's cholesterol and fat in your arteries, therefore it must be from the cholesterol and fat you eat. Not true. It's from the inflammation that happens from the carbohydrates, especially the refined ones that you consume. We have to end these narratives where they just say, well, we all know that eating meat raises cardiovascular disease. No, we don't all know that, because it's just not true. And I will challenge any vegan who is watching this right now, show me the randomized control clinical trial that shows eating fat and meat is directly resulting in cardiovascular disease. I double dog dare you. You can't, because it doesn't exist. Increasing the risk of diabetes. Really? Diabetes? Of all things, that's the one we know unequivocally is a direct result of the carbohydrates you're consuming, raising blood sugar and raising insulin. Diabetes? Cancer and stroke? Again, all these chronic diseases linked to insulin resistance, and yet somehow meat is the problem. Putting pressure on healthcare resources. No, the thing putting pressure on healthcare resources is most people are so confused by this kind of crap information that they're not doing anything at all. And not doing anything at all and going back to a standard American style diet is what's causing lots of disease in people. You're frustrating the crap out of them, telling them they can't eat meat anymore and that they must eat a vegan diet. And people go, F that, I'm not doing that. And they go back to eating crap again. And then they get disease and then you blame it on the meat. Nope, not the meat. Researchers have found that a meat tax could prevent almost 6,000 deaths in the UK, where a sugar tax was recently implemented. How do they quantify? I mean, right now we're seeing a lot of models with COVID-19 and numbers thrown around out there. How do they quantify that it would prevent almost 6,000 deaths? Epidemiology might say that, but is the epidemiology based on other epidemiology? So then you get a watered down version of a watered down version of a watered down version, and 6,000 people will be saved if we have a meat tax. While the idea of a meat tax isn't popular among people who see meat as an integral part of their culture and diet, yeah, no kidding. They've had their agenda to come after meat for a while because they hate us that eat meat in our diet. They think this carnivore, they think Sean Baker and Paul Saladino and Jimmy Moore and all these people that promote eating meat in your diet, they think we're all wackadoodle and that we're all going to keel over tomorrow. Have you guys seen Sean Baker lately? Like, dude is buff, lean. Oh my God. Like, he has put in some work in his body and has greatly improved everything in his health physically, and he's older than I am. So let's not pretend like you can't do good things having animal-based foods in your diet. It's pretty spectacular. Those who enjoy eating meat are increasingly opting for meat substitutes that look and taste like the real thing, including Beyond Burger and Impossible Burger, which are now served in your fast food restaurants all across the U.S. So this vegan in this article, this Brian Cateman, oh yeah, you might like your burgers, but go and eat our plant-based burgers. They're exactly the same. Never mind the fact that yours is beef and ours is a shitload of products and ingredients. That's a concoction in a lab. That's what they want us to believe. Those are healthier with 25 plus ingredients versus beef. Doesn't make any sense. It's often said that sin taxes are blunt measures to complex problems, such as obesity, which has multiple interlinked causes, but a meat tax is straightforward. All right. Sin taxes are blunt measures to complex problems like obesity, which is multifaceted. Obesity is not controlled by simply the foods you eat. So let's say they tax meat, you eat less meat. I would argue obesity will increase if you start taxing meat. How does that happen? The reason is people will replace meat with some of these crap plant-based burgers and or other processed carbohydrates or other forms of carbohydrates. So when you eat more carbohydrates, we know that's going to increase obesity and chronic disease. Do they not care about that ramification? No, because they don't see anything wrong with that. It's meat's the problem. So they think a meat tax is straightforward. No, it is very convoluted. And I wonder if they could tease it out. Okay, we're going to put a meat tax on all these companies that do things the wrong way, the factory farming and that kind of thing, and we're not going to mess with local farmers. Do you know how many people would go see a local farmer at eatwild.com if they knew that, that's done the right way? But then I guess at that point you have regulations in place that they come and watch these local farmers, and if they do one thing off of the protocol of doing things the right way, then they would impose the tax. So I guess that would add another layer of bureaucracy we really don't want in the food supply. Another complication opponents say is that a meat tax could disproportionately affect those in low-income communities where there is little access to fresh fruit and vegetables, and for whom meat is actually cheaper and more accessible. Now, how about them apples? Meat is cheaper than fruits and vegetables where there's limited access. And so in these low-income areas, meat's kind of what they survive on. And so now you're going to tax the very thing that is their survival food. What do they turn to after that? They have no choice but to turn to crappy garbage. It's sickening. On the other hand, proponents argue that sin taxes are just the next step up from the widely applied nudge theory, where residential areas and workplaces are designed to encourage healthier behavior such as exercise. Well, who gets to decide where you nudge me in the direction of healthier? Who gets to decide the definition of what healthier is? If I wanted to apply the nudge theory and get more people to eat a ketogenic diet, a carnivore style diet, I would raise taxes and have a sin tax on fruits and vegetables and grains and sugar. You know, if you're going to play that game, it just depends on who you're asking what the healthier option is and which direction you want to nudge people in. Who got to decide that veganism is the nudge direction and that animal foods are suddenly the sin of all sins in our food supply? Who got to decide that? Who gets to decide that? This is why taxes on anything related to food is absolutely idiotic. Research suggests any backlash would be short-lived over a meat tax, while the benefits will help us long-term. No, there's no research that shows that. There's no research that shows that there would be benefit to eliminating meat or lowering consumption of meat in your diet long-term. The health ramifications of that alone would be catastrophic. Don't doubt me on that one. A 2016 analysis of meat taxes worldwide found that levies of 40% on beef, 40%, 20% on dairy, and 8.5% on chicken would save 500,000 lives a year and dramatically reduce climate warming emissions. Oh, don't get me started on this climate change crap. Like, have you seen the cities since we've all been holed up in our houses that had the most smog? Like LA and Beijing, around the world. Look online, there's lots of pictures of this, what it looked like before we were all told to stay at home and what it looks like now. The cows have not stopped farting. They're still producing as much methane as they did before, and now suddenly all of the smog has lifted. So maybe it wasn't the meat after all. Maybe it wasn't the animals after all. These narratives that they put out there for years, they're just not holding up. A meat tax may also pave the way for a tax on poultry and seafood too, and encourage people to switch over to a plant-based diet, which research has found to be the healthiest diet. Oh, you gotta love these vegans who buy into their own propaganda. Come on, the healthiest diet. It's amazing, though, that they've gotten such a health halo. Like, you ask most people, is meat healthy? No. Is eating vegetables and being a vegetarian, vegan healthy? Yes. So it's like kind of we've been conditioned for so long now. Definitely the whole time that I've been online teaching about nutrition and health, the vegan, vegetarian people have just like hammer. We're the healthiest. We live the longest. We're the skinniest, blah, blah, blah. Meat's bad. Meat's got cancer. Meat's going to kill you. Meat, bad. And so when you repeat those messages often enough, they get in the psyche of people. And that's why they thought they had the perfect product last year when they came out with these plant-based burgers. And they started promoting them and got them in fast food restaurants and blah, blah, blah. And then they did a big fat flop. They didn't sell worth a crap in the stores. And people didn't buy them. So their propaganda didn't work. It's far from desirable that we've reached a point where lawmakers are looking at raising the tax on meat. Ideally, people would make choices that are best for them. Yeah, no kidding. And try to tell me otherwise. And for their planet, but for numerous reasons, including that people primarily choose based on price, taste, convenience, and social norms. This simply isn't the case. Well, it's not your role to tell me what I can eat and what I can't eat. And yet through this meat tax, they're trying to do that. While it would be best to not have to force people into changing their behavior, let's try a meat tax instead. The damages of industrial animal agriculture are far too urgent for us to ignore. I need a drink after that article, guys. Because there was so much like vegan propaganda points in there that I had to like constantly stop and correct it. But this is the kind of thing. Don't think a meat tax can't come to America. Now, I know you think there's no way that would ever happen. If they did it with sugar, don't think they won't try this in America with meat. I think it's going to come sooner than later. And it'll be a scary day. And they got a fight on their hands if they try to bring that to America. All right, I want to see what you guys have to say. I'm going to go to Instagram here first, and then we'll pop over to Facebook if I have time. So here we go. Welcome in, welcome in. JimmyRants.com is the website. Effort for Transformation, you rock. I've listened to almost all of your audiobooks. Well, thank you for that. My favorite one was in the Clarity books. I had to change my voice for the Moment of Clarity quotes. And so, Moment of Clarity quote, Dr. William Davis. Arturo said, Bud mentioned LLVLC podcast with Joel Salatin. Oh, that's cool. Thank you for sharing that. Beth says, they just ran out of ink, Jimmy. It's reducing the risk of diabetes and treatment costs from padding their big fat agenda. Yeah, that's true. Downtown Vapor says, this bleep drives me crazy. I don't disagree. Holly Jane says, this is so crazy. It is. Holly Jane also says, oh, the cow farting crap really cracks me up too. Yeah, they've long said methane is the reason why global warming, yada, yada. But it's like, gee, can it be some of the like cars in massive amounts in these big cities that could be causing all that smog? Yeah, I guess not. Big Food and Big Pharma are so corrupt and they own the media and Hollywood. Well, that is part of the problem. They own the messaging of this. And so not much you can do about that other than people like me just putting the word out. Beth says, why does their research get such large neon print and real research doesn't? Well, epidemiological research does because it's a sexy headline. You can pretty much make epidemiology say whatever you want. But hard data, the gold standard, the randomized controlled clinical trials, that data stands. That data is strong. And yet, because it's so small in the number of people involved, and the data doesn't necessarily go along with what they want it to say, they don't really give a whole lot of credence to it. Allie says if they try to pass, they'll probably hide it in some other bill like a stimulus check. Well, that's a whole nother story about how they hide legislation. I would doubt they try to put a meat tax into a stimulus or other kind of package. That would be horrible. All right, thank you, Instagram. Let's pop over here to my Facebook page. Hey, guys, thanks for being here today on Jimmy Rants. Michael says, I think a sugar tax is a great idea. I'd even go further than that. I think refined sugar should be completely banned. Don't get me wrong, Michael. I think refined sugar is the devil. I think high fructose corn syrup should have never gotten into the food supply. So don't misunderstand what I'm saying here. But once you allow a tax to be put on something like sugar, the next step is, well, we thought sugar was bad. Now we think meat and fat is bad. And we're seeing that now. That's the whole reason I'm bringing this to you here today, is they're proposing around the world having a meat tax. And they tried to tax butter in, I think it was Sweden or Denmark a few years back. And they got such major opposition to it. But don't think that they wouldn't do that here, wouldn't try to do that. And their justification is, well, we put it on sugar and we know that's bad, so now we need to put it on meat because that's just as bad as sugar. It's a slippery slope. When you allow one, you open Pandora's box to all the rest. Rhonda says, why do people feel such a strong need to control other people? Honest information and then let people make their choices. This is supposed to be a free country. Well, Rhonda, I think that is the way to do it. Educate, don't compel. I think that's the main thing about this is, why are we compelling people to make choices? Are we trying to save them from themselves? I suppose, but whose job is that? The last time I checked, Jimmy Moore is responsible for Jimmy Moore. I control what goes in my mouth. I control what I do in my life, blah, blah, blah. I don't need somebody else telling me, oh, well, meat's bad for you, so we're gonna slap that hand and we're gonna make you pay more if you want that meat, you sinful guy. And I just think it's disgusting. And then that money turns right around from the tax to propagandize you more as to why you need to get rid of meat in your diet. Yeah, bite me. It's not happening. Cave drawings show humans hunting animals, not growing corn. Exactly, Mitzi. That's true. Our ancestors would look at today and just shake their heads and go, what are you people doing? Mitzi also says there's a huge tax on cigarettes and alcohol, but that does not curb consumption. Yeah, according to this article, it did curb it by 25%, but again, that's a vegan propagandist trying to make his point. But you're right, people still smoke a lot. They still drink a lot. So people find a way. There's lots of healthcare costs with sugar, always. Mitzi says it's definitely the Twilight Zone. Yeah, some days I wonder, Mitzi, when people will wake up and when we'll wake up from this weirdness that we're living in, because it's definitely a weird time in our society. All right, let's see if there's any other people chiming in here. People should have a choice, says Holly Jane. Always. Like, choice is everything. When it comes to your food, that is a personal choice. You decide what you think is best for you. I interviewed a guy one time on the Living La Vida Low Carb show who did an experiment where all he ate was Twinkies. And he wanted to show how you could control your blood sugar and da-da-da. It was an experiment from a scientist. Now, he was super hypocaloric. I think he ate like 400 or 500 calories worth of Twinkies. But he's like, see, you can eat junk food and still keep your blood markers in check. I'm like, yeah, no. But should he be disallowed from doing that if he wanted to do that experiment? No. He has a right to be stupid. He has a right to eat any way that he wants to. Just as I have the right to eat my big old ribeye steaks and my eggs and my butter and all the things that I enjoy in my diet. Let's not try to forbid that. Holly Jane says, yes, education, unbiased education, and the freedom of choice for what you put in your own body. And that's the key. It's why I've been out here for 15 years. I try to find information that's important for your health and your diet, and I share it with you guys, and then you make the decision on your own what to believe in your own life. That's the way it should work. We're not trying to like squelch ideas. We're not trying to tax people's choices to smithereens. I don't want to tax vegetables just because I don't eat them. I want vegetarians and vegans to go ahead and have all the vegetables and fruits that they want. That doesn't bother me. Go eat it all you want. I'm not gonna encourage a tax on it. And if somebody's eating a standard American diet and they want to buy all the crappy garbage in the world, that is their choice. We do not need to be taxing that. And that is definitely not the role of a tax anyway. This is my main point in this Jimmy Rants. Judy says, I pray the silver lining of this whole virus mess is that there's more research into metabolic disease and their causes. How great that would be. I think it's already happening. We're already seeing, and I've got another Jimmy Rants in store for you guys. I printed out a paper this morning from a ketogenic wound physician who's going to make that very point on my Instagram stories here today. I had the hour-long video lecture that he gave about this, and he makes a very compelling argument that going keto would kind of prevent a lot of the symptoms and things from COVID-19 and other viruses. And so that's being put out there. The research is already starting on that, Judy, so thank you for that. I think it's important that we recognize that health is not just about what you eat or how many calories you eat. It's about what you put in your mouth. It's the real food. I see my friend Brittany just came on here. She's all about real food, real life. And so eat that real food, nourish your body, and what's that food doing for you? And through that, you make better choices. But if they tax the things that we think are better for us, and it becomes less available to us, it puts people in a pickle. I mean, look at what's happened with people being locked down right now and losing their jobs. I saw another almost 4 million people filed for unemployment this week. And so people don't have the resources they've had. And so they're limited in their resources. They're having to make these choices already. Then you add a meat tax on top of that? No, I'm not for that. It's not going to happen. A meat tax and even a sugar tax is an incredibly bad idea. That's it for this episode of Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. As always, go follow me. I'm over on Instagram at Livin' Low Carb Man, LivinLowCarbMan. We go live Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. Sometimes I'll throw in a 5 p.m. one. I probably will do one later today if I feel okay. And then sometimes on the weekends as well. But definitely 11 a.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday, so don't miss it. JimmyRants.com is the website for all the past episodes. You can also go over to YouTube, type in a keyword Jimmy Rants. You will find the show. And don't forget, tomorrow, you guys, on Fridays, I do an Ask Me Anything. So literally, come ready to bring your questions about literally anything you want to ask about. Keto, fasting, cholesterol, podcasting, book writing, being famous online, how you deal with haters, and a partridge in a pear tree. We do it all. You just ask your questions or anything personal you want to ask me. That's fine too. All right, guys. Until then, we'll see you then. All right.